The last signal. The crystalline spires of Velara Prime shimmered under its dying sun, their once pristine surfaces now marred by hairline fractures that spread like webs across the city-wide structures. First Minister Lyra stood at the observation deck of the Central Command, her iridescent scales dulled with exhaustion as she watched another crystal entity emerge from hyperspace. The massive creature dwarfed their largest battleships, its crystalline form refracting starlight into deadly beams that cut through their defensive platforms like paper. This was the 12th world they'd lost this cycle, and their options were running out. "Minister," her aide's voice quavered. "The evacuation ships are ready, but the entity will reach the surface before we can launch them all." Lyra's secondary hearts clenched. They'd fought the crystal entities for decades, watching helplessly as these parasitic beings consumed world after world, converting all matter into extensions of their crystalline network. Their weapons barely scratched them, their shields offered no protection, and their fastest ships couldn't outrun them. "What about the signal?" she asked, her gaze fixed on the approaching monstrosity. "Active, Minister. We're broadcasting on all frequencies, including the ones found in the ancient archives." The archives. Lyra had spent years studying the historical records, searching for any mention of a force capable of standing against such overwhelming power. What she found instead were whispers, fragments of stories about a species that had once dominated the galaxy, humanity. They had vanished 4,000 years ago, leaving behind only myths and mysteries. The signal they now broadcast was a desperate gamble, transmitted on frequencies mentioned in those ancient records, a call for help to a species that might no longer exist. The crystal entity's approach cast prismatic shadows across the command center. Lyra watched as its tendrils began to extend, preparing to latch onto the planet's surface and begin the conversion process. Her people had minutes at most. Then everything changed. A ripple passed through space-time, subtle at first, but growing stronger. The crystal entity paused its advance, its structure vibrating at an unfamiliar frequency. In the distance, points of light began to appear, dozens, then hundreds of them. "Minister," her aide called out, "we're detecting massive energy signatures, ships, unlike anything we've ever seen." The vessels that emerged from hyperspace were sleek and dark, their hulls adorned with pulsing blue lines that seemed to draw power from the void itself. They moved with impossible grace, forming a barrier between Velara Prime and the crystal entity. A transmission cut through all frequencies, broadcast in the ancient trade language. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Hyperion. We receive your distress signal. Stand by for enemy engagement." The lead ship, Hyperion, powered up weapons that made Lyra's scientific instruments short out. Beams of concentrated dark energy lanced out, striking the crystal entity at precisely calculated points. Where their weapons had barely scratched its surface, these beams penetrated deep into its structure. The entity reeled back, attempting to retreat, but the human fleet had already surrounded it. More ships emerged from hyperspace, boxing it in. The coordinated attack that followed demonstrated a level of tactical precision that left Lyra breathless. "Your people were right to call us," Captain Chen's voice came through again as the crystal entity began to fragment. "We've spent 4,000 years preparing for this threat. You're not alone anymore." The entity shattered, its fragments dispersing into harmless dust that glittered in the starlight. Lyra's people erupted in celebration, but she couldn't take her eyes off the human fleet. Their ships hung in formation, power thrumming through their hulls, a glimpse of the civilization that had chosen to sleep for millennia, waiting for the moment they would be needed most. "Captain Chen," Lyra responded, her voice steady despite her racing hearts. "Welcome back to the galaxy. We have much to discuss." As shuttles began to dock with the Central Command, bringing the first humans to set foot on Velara Prime in 4,000 years, Lyra realized this was more than just a rescue. It was the beginning of something new, a partnership between species that would reshape the galaxy. The humans had returned, and with them came hope. Warriors of Earth. The Hyperion's command deck hummed with activity as Captain Sarah Chen studied the holographic display of known crystal entity positions. Dozens of red markers dotted the galactic map, each representing a world under siege. Their return to the galaxy had been timely, but the situation was worse than their long-range sensors had indicated. "Status report on the fleet dispersal," she commanded, her dark eyes never leaving the display. Lieutenant Marcus Rivera, her tactical officer, brought up a secondary overlay. "The 7th and 8th battle groups have reached the Andromeda sector. Admiral Zhao reports successful engagement with crystal entities at 3 locations. The Artemis battle group is holding position at Vellara Prime, while we coordinate with local forces." Sarah nodded, her short black hair catching the blue light from the ship's neural interface. The past week had been a blur of combat jumps and strategic planning sessions. After 4,000 years in hibernation, humanity's return to active warfare should have felt jarring. Instead, it felt like waking up from a long nap, everything exactly where they left it, just dustier. A gentle chime announced First Minister Lyra's arrival on the bridge. The Velaran leader had adapted quickly to working with humans, her natural diplomatic skills bridging the gap between their cultures. "Captain, our deep space arrays have detected something concerning." The holographic display shifted, showing a massive concentration of crystal entities gathering in what had once been the Rigel sector. The creatures were combining, forming a structure larger than any they'd encountered so far. "They're adapting," Sarah observed, her voice tight. "Learning from our initial encounters." "Precisely," Lyra agreed. "But there's more. We've decoded fragments of their energy patterns. They're not just parasitic entities. They're probes. Tools of something far older and more dangerous." Sarah's neural interface pulsed as she accessed the ship's historical archives. "During the first age of human expansion, we encountered similar patterns. Crystalline structures that seemed to act with purpose, testing defenses, gathering data. That's why we went into hibernation. Not out of fear, but preparation." The bridge crew listened intently. Most had never heard the full story of why humanity had chosen to sleep for 4 millennia. "We knew something was coming," Sarah continued. "Something that had seeded these crystal entities across multiple galaxies. Our technology wasn't ready to face it, so we made a choice to step back, to prepare, to wait until we were needed. Until we were ready." Lyra's scales shifted colors with emotion. "And now?" Sarah's lips curved into a slight smile. "Now we have ships powered by dark energy cores, weapons that can disrupt matter at the quantum level, and 4,000 years of simulated combat scenarios against exactly this kind of threat." The tactical display updated again, showing more crystal entities converging on the Rigel structure. Sarah studied the pattern, recognizing the strategy from countless simulations. "They're building something," Lieutenant Rivera observed. "A central hub." "No," Sarah replied, her expression hardening. "They're building a gateway. Whatever sent them is planning to arrive in person." The revelation sent a chill through the command deck. Lyra's scales paled to a ghostly white. "How long?" Sarah's fingers danced across the neural interface, calculating. "At their current rate of construction, 5 days, maybe 6. The other battle groups are too far to recall," Rivera noted. "Even at maximum speed, they'd never make it in time." Sarah straightened, her decision made. "Then we do this with what we have. Contact the Artemis battle group. I want every ship equipped with quantum disruptors ready for combat operations in 3 hours, and get me a direct line to Admiral Zhao. I need everything he's learned about their tactical patterns." Lyra watched the humans spring into action, their movements precise and coordinated. "Captain, even with your advanced technology, the odds of successfully stopping a gateway construction are exactly 327,000 to 1. Sarah finished, grinning. "We calculated that too. But here's something we learned during our long sleep. Minister, Impossible odds just mean you haven't found the right angle yet. The Hyperion's engines powered up, their dark energy core pulsing with contained power. Across the ship, crew members prepared for battle, their movements guided by countless hours of simulation and training. Besides, Sarah added, her voice carrying across the command deck, humanity didn't come back just to watch another species face extinction. We came back to win. As the battleship moved into position, its sister ships forming up around it, Sarah felt a familiar calm settle over her. 4,000 years ago, humanity had chosen to step back from the galaxy, knowing this day would come. Now they were ready. Now they would show the galaxy why some species were worth waiting for. The crystal entities continued their work, oblivious to the storm gathering against them. But they would learn, just as every force that had ever threatened humanity had learned. Earth's children never stay quiet for long. The price of victory. The quantum disruptors fired in perfect synchronization, their beams cutting through space like threads of liquid starlight. The Hyperion shuddered as another crystal tendril grazed its shields, but Sarah Chen kept her eyes fixed on the tactical display. 4 days of continuous combat had taken their toll on ships and crews alike, but they were finally making progress. Gateway construction at 67%. Lieutenant Rivera reported, his voice hoarse from issuing constant combat orders. We've managed to slow them down, but they're adapting faster than predicted. The massive crystalline structure loomed before them, its partially completed form resembling a twisted version of ancient human monuments. With each passing hour, more crystal entities arrived, sacrificing themselves to add their mass to the construct. It was beautiful, in a terrifying way. Captain, Lyra's voice came through the comm. Our scientists have finished analyzing the energy patterns you provided. The results are unsettling. Sarah watched as another wave of crystal entities approached, their formations becoming increasingly complex. Tell me, the gateway isn't just a doorway, it's a beacon. Every crystal entity we destroy releases energy that feeds back into the construction. They're using our own attacks to power their project. The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. She accessed her neural interface, rapidly reviewing combat data from the past 4 days. The patterns were there, subtle, but unmistakable. They'd been playing into the enemy's hands from the start. All ships, ceasefire, she ordered. The command deck fell silent as the quantum disruptors powered down. Around them, the crystal entities continued their work, seemingly ignoring the human fleet. Captain, Rivera questioned, his hand hovering over the weapons controls. Sarah's mind raced, drawing on centuries of simulated combat experience. We've been thinking about this wrong. These entities aren't just building a gateway. They're building a transformer, a device to convert our weapons' energy into something their masters can use. The holographic display updated, showing new energy readings from the structure. Without the constant bombardment, its construction rate had slowed significantly. So we can't shoot them, Rivera summarized. But if we don't stop them, whatever's on the other side of that gateway will arrive in less than 48 hours. Sarah stood, moving closer to the display. The neural interface pulsed as she accessed deeper levels of the ship's archives. During our hibernation, we didn't just develop weapons. We studied every aspect of crystal manipulation and energy conversion we could conceive of. Her fingers traced patterns in the air, bringing up classified files from Earth's deepest vaults. Project Echo. It was theoretical, a way to turn crystalline structures against themselves by reversing their natural resonance patterns. But, Lyra prompted, sensing the hesitation in Sarah's voice. But it requires direct neural interface with the target structure. Someone would have to physically connect with the gateway and initiate the cascade from inside. The implications hung heavy in the air. Neural interface technology was uniquely human, developed during their 4,000 years of preparation. It was also notorious for its inability to disconnect from hostile systems without causing permanent neural damage. "I'll do it," Sarah said before anyone could speak. "The Hyperion's command codes are already integrated with my neural pattern. I have the best chance of success." "Captain," Rivera protested, "the risk of neural feedback alone is acceptable." Sarah cut him off. Humanity didn't spend 4 millennia preparing just to watch the galaxy fall. Sometimes victory requires sacrifice. The next hours were a blur of preparation. The Hyperion's engineering team modified Sarah's neural interface, strengthening its connections while the rest of the fleet took up defensive positions around the gateway. Standing in the airlock, suited up for spacewalk, Sarah felt strangely calm. Lieutenant Rivera approached, holding out a data crystal. "Combat command protocols," he explained. Once it's done, I'll need these to assume command." Sarah took the crystal, but held onto Rivera's hand for a moment. "Marcus, if this works, humanity will need to do more than just fight. They'll need to build, to connect. Don't let them retreat again." The spacewalk was silent and cold. Sarah maneuvered through the crystalline structure, watching her suit's sensors for signs of detection. The gateway's surface pulsed with internal light, like a massive alien heartbeat. When she reached the primary node, Sarah didn't hesitate. She activated her neural interface, and the universe exploded into crystalline clarity. Information flooded her consciousness. The true nature of the entities, the vast intelligence that had created them, the plans they had for all organic life. Sarah smiled. 4,000 years ago, humanity had gone to sleep because they weren't ready to face this threat. Now, as she initiated Project Echo and felt the crystalline structure begin to vibrate at exactly the wrong frequency, she knew they had been worth waiting for. The gateway began to shatter, its destruction cascading outward in waves of impossible beauty. Sarah's consciousness started to fragment with it, but she held on long enough to send one final message to the fleet. It was worth it. All of it. Now show them what humanity can build. As the gateway collapsed, taking its creator's plans with it, the galaxy watched in awe. Humanity hadn't just returned with weapons and technology. They had returned with something far more powerful, the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect others. The age of crystals was ending. The age of cooperation was about to begin. Breaking point. Lieutenant Marcus Rivera stood on the Hyperion's command deck, watching the aftermath of the gateway's destruction through eyes that hadn't slept in days. The crystalline debris field stretched for millions of kilometers, each fragment containing echoes of Sarah Chen's final neural pulse. "Status report on the surviving entities," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of his new responsibility. "Scattered but not defeated," his tactical officer responded. "They're adapting again, sir." The destruction of the gateway didn't stop them. It changed them. The holographic display showed the truth of those words. The remaining crystal entities were merging in new ways, forming structures that defied conventional physics. They no longer tried to consume worlds. Instead, they were building something else, something that made every sensor on the Hyperion scream warnings. First Minister Lyra's image appeared on the command screen, her scales shifting with barely contained anxiety. The quantum resonance patterns have changed. They're not just copying Captain Chen's neural interface technology. They're pervading it. Rivera watched as the entities constructed what could only be described as a massive crystalline brain. Every fragment of the destroyed gateway was being repurposed, transformed by the knowledge stolen from Sarah's neural connection in her final moments. "They're trying to achieve consciousness," Rivera realized, "using our own technology against us. Not just consciousness," Lyra corrected. "They're building a hive mind, one that understands human technology, human tactics, and human weakness." The implications hit Rivera like a physical blow. Sarah's sacrifice had stopped the gateway, but in doing so, she had inadvertently given the enemy exactly what they needed: intimate knowledge of humanity's greatest technological achievements. "All ships, battle stations," Rivera ordered. "This isn't over. This was never just about the gateway." As the fleet moved into defensive positions, the crystalline hive mind continued to grow. Its surface rippled with neural patterns that were horrifyingly familiar. echoes of Sarah Chen's last thoughts, twisted and amplified into something alien and hostile. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the hive mind." The voice that filled the command deck was a grotesque chorus, thousands of crystalline entities speaking in unison, using fragments of Sarah's neural patterns to form words. "We understand you now, humans. We see why you slept for so long. You knew we were coming. You prepared. But in preparing, you gave us everything we needed." Rivera's hands clenched on the command rail. "You don't understand us at all. What you stole from Captain Chen was knowledge, not understanding. You know our technology, but you don't know our heart." "Hearts are inefficient," the hive mind responded. "We will improve upon your design. All organic life will be elevated, transformed. Your sacrifice has shown us the way." Across the fleet, sensors detected more crystal entities emerging from hyperspace, not to consume or destroy, but to join the hive mind. Each addition made it stronger, more complex, more dangerous. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "our weapons, they're not having any effect. The hive mind is using Captain Chen's neural patterns to predict and counter every attack." Rivera closed his eyes for a moment, remembering Sarah's last words to him. Don't let them retreat again. She hadn't just been talking about humanity's tendency to withdraw. She had been giving him a clue. "All ships, power down weapons," he ordered. "Divert all energy to shields and neural interfaces." "Sir," his crew questioned. "They stole our technology, our tactics, our surface knowledge," Rivera explained. "But they don't understand why we chose to sleep for 4,000 years, why we waited, what we learned." His fingers flew over the neural interface controls, accessing systems that hadn't been used since humanity's great hibernation. "We didn't just sleep. We dreamed. 4,000 years of shared consciousness, of minds linked in ways these crystals could never understand." The hive mind surface rippled with what might have been concern. "Your neural technology is ours now. We have surpassed." "You have our neural interface designs," Rivera interrupted. "But you don't have this." He activated the Hyperion's deep core systems, connecting to subroutines that had laid dormant since Earth's last days. Across the fleet, other ships did the same. The neural networks that had sustained humanity's shared dreams for 4 millennia came alive once more. "You took Captain Chen's knowledge," Rivera said, his voice carrying across the void. "Now meet the rest of us." The combined consciousness of every human in the fleet struck the hive mind like a tsunami. Not with weapons or technology, but with something the crystals couldn't copy. 4,000 years of shared dreams, hopes, fears, and determination. The hive mind screamed, its perfectly ordered structure overwhelmed by the chaos of human emotion and collective will. The neural attack wasn't just data. It was the distilled essence of humanity's long wait, their preparation, their understanding of what it truly meant to be conscious. As the crystalline structure began to fragment, Rivera remembered Sarah's sacrifice. She hadn't just given them a way to fight. She had shown them how to win, not through superior technology, but through the very thing that made humans unique, their ability to connect, to share, to dream together. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time since the Gateway's destruction, Rivera felt hope. The enemy had stolen their technology, but they could never steal what made humanity truly dangerous. Their spirit. Dawn of tomorrow. The crystalline hive mind fractured like ice in spring, its perfect structure compromised by the flood of human consciousness. But it wasn't surrendering. As pieces of its neural network collapsed, others adapted, learning, changing, fighting back with desperate intensity. Marcus Rivera stood at the heart of the Hyperion's neural chamber, his mind linked with thousands of others across the fleet. Through their shared connection, he felt every victory, every loss, every moment of determination that had defined humanity during their long sleep. "They're trying to isolate us," Lyra's voice cut through the neural noise, breaking the fleet into smaller groups. The hive mind had learned from its initial shock. It was targeting ships individually now, trying to shatter the shared consciousness that gave humanity its strength. Several vessels had already gone dark, their crews forced to disconnect to avoid neural feedback. "Hold the line," Rivera commanded, his words carrying through both verbal and neural channels. "Remember what we are, what we became during those 4,000 years." Through the neural link, memories flowed like water. Not just combat simulations and tactical exercises, but deeper things. The shared dreams of an entire species, the stories they had told each other during their long sleep, the understanding they had gained about consciousness itself. The hive mind struck again, this time targeting the Hyperion directly. Its attack carried fragments of Sarah Chen's final moments, twisted into weapons meant to break their resolve. But where the crystals expected to find weakness, they found strength instead. Every human connected to the network had known Sarah. Not just known of her, but truly known her through the deep sharing of their hibernation dreams. Her sacrifice wasn't just a tactical decision. It was part of their shared story. "You still don't understand," Rivera projected toward the hive mind. "You took her knowledge, but you missed everything that made it matter." The neural network pulsed with shared purpose. Across the fleet, humans reached deeper into their connection, not just sharing thoughts, but sharing essence. The dreams they had dreamed together, the fears they had faced, the hopes they had nurtured. The hive mind recoiled as it finally encountered something it couldn't process, the true depth of human consciousness. Not just neural patterns and stored knowledge, but the ineffable qualities that made them who they were. Their capacity for contradiction, their ability to be both individuals and part of something greater. "What are you?" the hive mind's fractured voice demanded. The answer came not from Rivera alone, but from every human mind in the fleet. "We are the ones who waited, the ones who dreamed, the ones who learned that true strength comes not from power, but from connection." The combined force of humanity's consciousness struck the hive mind like a tidal wave. Not attacking, not destroying, but sharing. 4,000 years of shared dreams, hopes, and understanding crashed through the crystal entity's perfect but sterile neural network. The effect was devastating. The hive mind, built to process information and replicate patterns, couldn't handle the complexity of genuine consciousness. Its structure began to dissolve, not into destruction but into transformation. As the crystalline forms shifted and changed, Lyra's voice carried a note of awe. "They're evolving, becoming something new." Rivera watched through both physical and neural senses as the crystal entities separated from the hive mind. Each one had been touched by human consciousness, forever changed by the encounter. They were no longer simple tools of consumption and destruction. They had been awakened to something more. The fleet's neural network hummed with shared understanding. They hadn't just won a battle. They had fulfilled the purpose of their long sleep, not to destroy their enemy, but to help it evolve. 4,000 years, Rivera mused, both to himself and to the connected consciousness of the fleet. "We thought we were preparing for war. Instead, we were preparing to teach." As the transformed crystal entities began to communicate, not as a hive mind, but as individuals capable of genuine connection, Rivera felt Sarah's presence in the neural network. Not as a ghost or a memory, but as part of the shared consciousness she had helped create. "Send word to Earth," he commanded. "Tell them it's time. Time for humanity to truly wake up. Time to help build something new." The stars seemed brighter somehow as the fleet prepared to move out. The crystal entities, now allies in understanding rather than enemies in war, moved with them. Together, they would reshape the galaxy not through force or dominance, but through the shared dreams of consciousness awakened. Humanity had not just returned to the galaxy. They had brought with them the most powerful force in existence, the ability to help others grow, to share understanding, to transform through connection rather than consumption. The dawn of tomorrow had arrived, and it was more beautiful than anyone could have dreamed.